FDF, we spent years mastering our craft, from precise welding and machining to competing at the highest level of drifting. Every week, we'll be giving you our tips, tricks, and all the insider knowledge you need, straight from our shop to your screen. Welcome to Just a Tip Tuesday.
Okay, what's up everybody? We're here at FDF Race Shop. We are just completing a cage on our friend Paul's 370Z. Paul's plan with this car is to do global time attack. He wants to do Pikes Peak with it. So it's gonna see some pretty serious rubbing and racing. This is a cage from Cage Kits. This is actually their first 370 cage that they had ever made, and it's just been sitting on our shelf for well over a year now, waiting to get stuffed into a car. So Paul dropped this off a couple weeks ago, and we've just been crunching away at the install here and there on the car. So just wanted to go over a few talking points that we've come across on roll cages in the past. Kind of some tips and tricks if you get to a spot where you're not necessarily sure what to do. And this is probably one of the most involved cages that I've ever done. So we felt like it would be a good demonstration of what to watch out for, kind of our approach to doing roll cages, and kind of the step-by-step process that we use to get things like this done, and done in a proper and safe way. Okay, so in our cage, you can see there's a few points, like I said, that we wanted to mention. Our door bars land outside the door frame, both at the front and the back. You can see part of these welds here, but clearly not something that you would be able to stuff a torch into and get welded. So that's usually the tricky part with these cages, because they're so involved. You can see how elaborate the door bars and everything are. In order to get welds on the outside of absolutely everything, you basically need to leave a few of the key components out up to the point where you drop it, suck everything in, and then you're able to access these welds here at the front. So like I said, there's a few different ways to do it, and it's completely chassis dependent. But the big thing I would say that I've learned over the last few years of doing them is if you don't need it in when you drop it in order to weld the top. So there's a few things, again, on this cage you can see we have our big forehead bars, roof bars. So in order to get to the top of all these welds, it's actually touching the roof here. So in order to do that, the whole roll cage needs to be dropped down to a point where you can get up on top of the roll cage. So obviously you can imagine the whole thing needs to come inside the rockers and then be pushed down. In order to do that, if the dash bar was in, you wouldn't be able to pull these in. If any of the X bar stuff was in, harness bars were in, you can't suck it in like that to get those outside welds. So it is extremely important that you take it step by step. And like I said, if you don't need it in the car in order to weld the top of it, when you drop it, basically leave it out until the very last chance you get, and then slap it in once everything is welded on the outsides where you need it to be, on the tops where you need it to be, and then put the dash bar in, put your harness bars in, and that's going to give you the best fighting chance to pull everything in. You basically just need to keep everything as malleable as possible in order to pull it and push it and drop it and all that kind of good stuff. So we will basically start with our main hoop and backstays. That's kind of my go-to. Josiah might have he might like to do the fronts first, but because especially with a pre-cut cage, you're banking on everything being in the right spot. And if you do mess one bar up, or say your main hoop was crooked when you tacked it in, that's gonna make one backstay fit and the other not, or your front stays might end up in a different spot. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind when you're just starting to put tubes into the car. But I would say give yourself some really solid reference points. And when you do that, you're gonna be able to measure, say, okay, if I check from my rear tub to my main hoop, I got X amount of inches, and just kind of do that in as many places as you can. And that's gonna give you the best chance of getting everything squared up and in the spot that it needs to be. When you do drop it and weld the tops and pick it back up and you're pulling it in and pushing it, things will move. You're welding completely 360 degrees around tubes. Everything's gonna pull or push or shrink a little bit. So everything is not gonna be exactly where you left it after you drop it and pick it back up again. Like in this car, we had to do it twice. Once to do all of the roof welds, and then another time in order to get the backstays in, because we couldn't pitch the cage up far enough to clear the backstays the first time when we dropped it. So we did a full drop the first time and basically a half drop the second time, just to get the top of the rear stay welds. But yeah, so it's more just giving yourself a fighting chance of being able to move things. Once things are welded, you can't move anything, and you're gonna have a miserable time zip cutting or sawzalling stuff out in order to either remake it or take it out, do what you need to do, and then try to put it back if you haven't done too much damage. But yeah, it's a very tedious process. But once you do 2 or 3, you kind of get an idea of what can stay, what needs to stay out, and then what needs to happen in order to get every weld possible that you can. So obviously it's a huge benefit to have a full weld all the way around your door bars, side to side, front to back, everything like that. The downside of that is that you will not always be able to get the tube to the base plate welds. Like in this case, if you take a peek in here, Jack, you can see we're basically touching the B-pillar the entire way down the car. This is obviously far above and beyond any FD standard. FIA bars are not a drifting thing. That's a rally FIA, and for good reason. I mean, they flip cars down cliffs and stuff like that. Stuff that drifting doesn't necessarily get exposed to. But yeah, so this would be on the far extreme end of a roll cage. Like I said, this is probably the most involved one that I've ever done. But safety is the entire reason behind doing these. So if you feel like anything that you're doing might not be safe, then it's probably not right. Yeah, that's kind of our quick going over for how to access welds, what we do in order to reach spots that you know, looking at it, you'd be like, oh, you could never get a weld in there, but get some ratchet straps, get one of these. It's on the other side, but Princess Auto spreader. Jack put that up on the screen. And yeah, we have tons of roll cage videos. We have a video of us making our own roll cage from scratch. And now we're kind of into doing roll cage from cage kits now. And we find it just night and day difference. We save probably half of our time just in not needing to bend all of our own tubes, notch them. We love cage kits at this point, especially Josiah, who built cages for 10 plus years before doing a cage kit. I obviously don't have as much experience, but in my probably 5 or 6 handmade cages that I've done, the difference between that to this is night and day. Like I said, the main difference is that you can't make stuff to fit. If something doesn't fit, it's because something else is not in the right spot, which can be frustrating, but at the same time, you at least know everything you're doing. If everything's touching, it's all symmetrical and everything should be square to each other. But yeah, I mean, obviously it still takes a lot of thinking and a lot of planning ahead and a lot of fabrication skills to begin with. So I wouldn't buy one and just expect to throw it at your car and have it go swimmingly. It's a tricky process, and we're just trying to give you guys the most tools that we can to try and make your roll cage install go as best as possible. So thanks very much for watching. Subscribe, like the channel. No, not like the channel, like the video. Subscribe to the channel. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.